Everyone, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Kluwer. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Redmond.
Here.
Councilmember Collings.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Mayor Stackla.
Here. All right, so we're moving on to item number 3, in what should be a very eventful and interesting city council meeting. We'll start off with Melissa Cummins and the Siskiyou County Local Transportation Commission and a special presentation with much supporting high-tech visuals.
Just can you hear me okay? Let me adjust this. So technology is a wonderful thing. Until it doesn't work quite right. So we're going to have a little bit of a different presentation than we expected. But good evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Cummins, the Executive Director for the Siskiyou County Local Transportation Commission. This evening, I'm here to kind of give you an overview on what we have going on at the Commission, some projects we're working on, and hopefully get some public engagement on one particular project. So your technology folks have got me covered over here. So as I said, Siskiyou County Local Transportation Commission, I want to clarify, even though our name has Siskiyou County in it, we're technically not part of the county. We're actually a separate legal entity from the county. Our job is the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. So we are the RTPA, and most of you probably have been around government long enough, you know we like our acronyms. So we are the RTPA for the region, and our region is the entire county. So all 9 cities, the entire unincorporated area of the county is who we serve. So our role is, well, let me back up. So my commission is comprised of members of the Board of Supervisors and members from LOLA, which is the League of Local Agencies, which you are all familiar with. So I have 3 boards of supervisors and 3 LOLA representatives and 1 alternate on either side of that. So that's who I serve. So our responsibility, actually, if you would go back 1 slide for me. So our responsibility is for regional transportation planning. That includes transit, airports, streets and roads, and active transportation. We are a liaison between all of our local agencies and the state. And so a lot of the meetings I'm involved in is making sure that, you know, the state will reach out to me and say, this is what we're working on, who do we need to have at the table? And so that could be including the city of Mount Shasta, it could be including Public Works, it could be including a variety of stakeholders. So that's one of the roles I serve in this new capacity. And then we have some various programs and plans that we manage. We're going to talk about a few of those this evening. Okay, go ahead. So this slide just kind of touches on some of the coordination activities we've had going on recently. Any sort of project on the state highway that includes some of our stakeholders' jurisdictions, we're making sure that we're at the table and making sure the local agencies' concerns are being heard. And so that's been a fun process. If many of you may remember the 89 South Mount Shasta Boulevard interchange project that began many, many moons ago and then came back and then died. And then, so I was actually involved in that a long time ago, and it's still not an active project, but if it were to come back to fruition, we would be engaged in that. So local STIP projects, we are working with our local partners on the STIP projects, current and existing and future. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a few slides as well. And then I also have monthly meetings with Caltrans local assistants out of Reading to make sure that if you're working on a project, we're making sure we're hitting all those targets before you get to construction so that we don't have any hiccups along the way. So grant opportunities, there's lots of money out there for transportation right now. And so anytime I hear of a specific concern here in your jurisdiction, I'm looking at these grant opportunities as they're coming in and saying, hey, we might want to look at this, or trying to partner on something. And we're going to actually talk about one of those opportunities that we're pursuing at the moment later on in my presentation this evening. And then the transportation stakeholder engagement, there's lots of groups out there, as there are with any sort of arena in public sector work that are focused on specific areas. So we're a member of the Rural Counties Task Force. We're also involved with the North State Super Region, and really staying on top of all of the changing dynamics at the state level, including the state budget, lack of money, we all know how that all goes, right? So next slide, please. So I wanted to touch on just some of the programs that we have that provides funds for the city of Mount Shasta. And I'm very pleased on the very first bullet on this slide, the Regional Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. It's an allocation of funds that we get. They're federal funds. The commission exchanges them for state funds, and then they become local funds through a process we don't need to go into this evening. But so they can be used for road improvements, bike, ped, sidewalks. And so I looked at my history this morning in preparation for coming and visiting with you tonight. And the city of Mount Shasta has actually, since the 12-13 cycle, you've had 3 different projects that were funded through this program, all of which were sidewalk improvements, and you have so far acquired about $375,000 into the city for those projects. So I'm super excited about that, to see you guys really taking advantage of that. Your public works director and city manager are actively engaged in those communications when they come out, and so we'll continue to work with them and hopefully get some more funds here in the city for that. The next group is the local transportation funds. You may recall seeing a claim form that was sent to the staff earlier this year. These are the funds that assist with funding the transit operations that you essentially pay for, which is stage, and then any remaining funds you get to keep and use for streets and roads. So there's kind of a split of those monies. The carbon reduction program was one of those programs just recently that I was on a stakeholder call, and they're talking about this CRP program, and I'm like, what is that? It's about $400,000 to the county that we can use on projects to reduce carbon in the county. So we're looking at what does that mean, what projects are eligible, and then we'll come back to our group and say, okay, how do we want to use these funds? So stay tuned for more on that. And then some of our transit funding, because you do pay for stage services. I wanted to just kind of touch on those a little bit. State of Good Repair is all grant funding from the state, and that is primarily focused on maintaining infrastructure, upgrading vehicles so they can buy new buses. They can actually rehabilitate buses, which they just recently did. And then low carbon transit operations is designed to increase ridership, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that one's a little more, it's more focused on increasing the people using the transit services. State transit assistance is an allocation we get every year, basically pays for operational costs, not a lot of strings attached to that one. And then SB 125 is a new program that the legislature adopted this past year that is going to inject about $5.5 million into Siskiyou County for transit-related projects. And so we had to put together a program of projects in December, and we sent that off to the state. We have about 4.5 years to I was going to say, this is a different one. I haven't had a train go through during my presentation yet. So, but so that we're waiting on that list of projects to see if we're going to get approved. I'm sure you've all heard about the budget woes at the state level. So that program is the only one so far that we have heard there may be a delay in those funds being received by the county or the commission. So we're monitoring that closely. And they said, well, you're still going to get the money. It just might be a year later than you were expecting. So we're watching it. So, and then lastly, the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, what we call the RTIP. If you could go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little more in depth about the RTIP. So the RTIP is primarily for streets and roads projects, and so the projects that are included in this program have to be nominated by your agency or the other 9 agencies that we work with. So I work with the 9 incorporated cities, the county road department, in this project specifically, or this program specifically. So these projects are always nominated by the local agency. It's very fun. And so the process for this program is every odd numbered year, we go through an entire evaluation process. I reach out to all of my local partners, say, what projects do you want to have submitted? We sat down in the fall, we talked about existing projects, we talked about new projects, we talked about components or challenges that you may have with your proposed projects, and then we put together a program. The commission, our commission, adopts that in December of the odd numbered year, and then it goes to the CTC, which is the California Transportation Commission. So they are in the process right now of reviewing all of the RTIPs from all of the agencies across the state. And actually, by this Friday, we are supposed to have their staff recommendations. I emphasize that to say, you'll see at the bottom of that slide, $6.8 million is what we were given as our magic dollar amount. That's our target. That is the number of dollars we get in this next program cycle. When we requested projects be submitted by the various agencies, we had over $20 million in projects. And that seems like a pretty big difference, right? But it's really not that different than what we saw 10 years ago. So it's just the numbers are a little bit higher. So it's important to note that because our target was $6.8 million, we came in with the projects that we proposed for programming $30,000 under that target. When the CTC held their North State STIP hearing on January 24th, collectively across the state, they had $68 million more in requested projects than they had in the statewide target. And so we're hopeful, and I keep saying that every time I've been doing these presentations over the last few weeks, that they will basically say, you're good to go with what you've proposed. And so I've got 3 more days to wait, and then by Friday we should know for sure. But so far we have not been contacted and asked to remove any of our projects from our programming. So that's exciting news for the county. And we've always come in under our target. So I think that speaks that, you know, we just want our part. We're not asking for any part from any other agency. So, okay. And I did want to also note on that, when I was presenting to the Board of Supervisors a few weeks ago, one of the board members asked me specifically on this program how it's funded. And we all know that there's a push to go to zero emissions because of climate change. And so this program is funded directly from the excise tax on gasoline. And last week I was on a call that they said they're projecting by a certain year in the future about a $4 billion shortfall in the funding for streets and roads projects and repairs and maintenance. So we're monitoring the situation to see what that means for us locally, and we'll continue to keep you updated as that progresses. So, okay, so then the next slide is a little more specific to your agency, and this is your existing project. So you have the Lake Street Rehabilitation Project that's currently in there. It's actually been programmed for a few years, and just recently we pushed it out to, I believe, 25, 26 for the construction, because we were trying to align some other grant opportunities that you had acquired. And so we're working closely with your team and Caltrans to make sure that hopefully all the stars align and you get your project ready to go when it needs to be ready to go. The next project that was included in that next round was your McLeod Avenue reconstruction project. That is the environmental only phase because of the dollar amount of the construction funding needed to build the project. We've asked the city to look at some grant opportunities. Our $6.8 million has to stretch between 10 agencies, and so construction for that one project was close to wiping out about 90% of the pot in future years. So we're going to continue to work with them and look at potential grant opportunities for this project. So I did want to mention, we have a demo of this map that we're going to show you, but we're having some technical difficulties this evening. So I just want to point out on this slide where there's a little blue box at the bottom. This is a disclaimer. I mentioned earlier that these projects that are included in the programming are at your request. So whatever you decide is your priority for your jurisdiction, we want that to continue to be the case. And so on the map that we're going to show you, there's information in there that says this project's going to construct on this date. And so we want to make sure residents understand that that is what we best guess at this point. There are things that could change. You could come back to me and say, you know what, we really need to postpone this project and we need to put this one in its place. And we're going to go based on what your request is. So the map is great. We've been able to provide an amazing interactive map to show projects all over the county, but we just want to make sure residents understand that it's not a guarantee that the project for their street may be constructed in a specific year. Okay. Go ahead and go to the next one. Okay. Okay, so he actually skipped the slide that was supposed to be a little video that demonstrated that. We're going to go Plan B for that one. So the next program I wanted to talk about is the pavement management system. So this is a project that was started in 2015. The commission hired a consultant to come around and drive a vehicle that looks similar to that one, drive around all of the paved segments in the entire county and collect what we refer to as a pavement condition index. And that is basically looking at the condition of the road. Does it have cracking? Are there large gaps? And it gives it a rating. So that was done in 2015, as I mentioned. We did subsequent updates in 17 and 2019. And then in December, this past December, the commission just awarded another 3-year contract. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit because you'll see that vehicle. So if you look at your update schedule there, Mount Shasta's information was last updated in the system, which is a cloud-based system, in 2017, 2018. So the data that we have in there right now is from back when we did those updates. Your next update will be 2025. So the spring of 2025, you will see this vehicle driving through town. We will be working closely with your city manager and your public works director, and they will have information about the project, where we're expecting to be on certain days. So if residents see this vehicle driving around, they can stop the driver. The driver will have contact information and basically refer them back to the city staff to explain what's going on. So just want you to be aware of it. So when you see that vehicle driving around, you know what they're doing and why they're doing it. This information is really helpful for the commission, for your staff, and for the state. The PCI is one of the performance measures that the state uses when you request money through the RTIP program. And they want to see what is your PCI now, what is it going to be if you don't build, and what will it be if you do build. And to give you an idea, 0 is a dirt gravel road, 100 is brand new pavement. And so you're kind of in between there. So next year, watch for the very odd looking vehicle driving through town. So then this slide actually shows you from Street Saver, the top portion is the system-wide for the entire region. We have 5 square miles of paved roads. There are 2,700 plus sections of pavement, and a section is from one corner to another. So each section of your paved roads is counting as one of those. And then the average PCI, which is the little graph in the upper right-hand corner, is 46. Again, keeping in mind the last update that was done anywhere in the county was 2019. So this data is still about 3.5, 4 years old. If you look on the bottom of the slide, this is your specific information. So you have 0.15 square miles of paved roads. You have 249 sections, and your average PCI is 35. So right now, based on the best data that we have at the time, you're actually a little bit below the region-wide average. So as we go through and do the update, we will gather information on any sort of pavement maintenance that's been done since the last update. So if you have gone through and chip sealed a road, you've repaved a road, all of that is going to get updated. And so that should hopefully kind of level that out a little bit. Okay. Moving on to the active transportation plan. So if you would go ahead and go to the next slide for me. Thank you. So the active transportation plan is funded by a grant through the California Active Transportation Program through the CTC. Our project team is myself plus Alta Planning and Design, which I believe you are familiar with. They've been doing some work for the city of Mount Shasta. And then also the Siskiyou Outdoor Recreation Alliance, who I believe has also been working on some of your projects as well. So the red sentence there basically kind of summarizes what the ATP is designed to do. I know you have been very active in designating your own projects and working on your own plan. So I first want to say that we're not trying to redo all of that work that you've already done. Our goal, because Mount Shasta has been so proactive in it, is basically taking your plan and going out into the unincorporated areas and making those connections. And we did the same thing with Dunsmere. They just recently went through this process. So we're going to take what you already have, which we already have received a copy of, and add to it from the outskirts into the unincorporated areas of the county. So go ahead and go to the next slide for me, please. So this kind of gives you the timeline of the project. We're in phase 1 right now. We have done data collection from all of our local partners. The community survey is active, which we're going to show you here shortly. We're going to talk a little bit about open houses, and I'm doing city council presentations to every one of our city councils in the county. So then we'll go to phase 2, which will be later this summer, which will be our open house. They're going to come around to community events. They're going to be meeting with key partners. And then phase 3 will be later and early next year with the hopeful adoption of the final plan by about this time next year. So next slide, please. So this is where, if you have any ideas of who we should talk to, I would love to hear from you. The engagement strategy slide kind of shows you a summary of who we've already got identified. So our technical advisory committee, they will actually be meeting Wednesday afternoon to review the existing conditions report that has been drafted by Alta. And then the community opinion survey is out there available for residents to put information in there, submit concerns, ideas, that sort of stuff. Our open house is going to be scheduled for in Wairika. We're doing one in North County and then another one in South County later on in the project. So the first one is scheduled for April 24th at the Transit Center in Wairika. And we will also have that on our Facebook page too. So you can watch for that. And then we'll be meeting with our key partners, school districts, local agencies. We have an expansive list. Sora has been a huge help in getting us, all of the really important partners that we need to talk with. Walk audits, we will have an entire week of walk audits. So Mount Shasta is scheduled for, as it stands right now, April 29th. And we will provide additional information to city staff once we kind of get an idea. We've got certain areas of the county designated on certain days, and then we'll work with the city manager on identifying morning or afternoon, and that way if you'd like to participate, and that would be open to anybody from the public as well. And then project promotion, we have been posting stuff on our Facebook page. We also have information on the commission's page of the county website, and we'll show you that here in just a moment. And then our plan for the community outreach events is that we would be here for the Mount Shasta 4th of July event. So if you have other suggestions, please feel free to let me know. Obviously, my contact information is at the end of the presentation. Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. And this is the one we're going to have to skip because it's not working. Okay, so next steps. As I mentioned, the existing conditions draft report is actually ready, and it's going to be reviewed with our technical advisory committee tomorrow or Wednesday. Sorry, I have an LTC meeting tomorrow and then TAC on Wednesday. So if you have other data that you feel is important to the project, please feel free to share that with us, and that way we can get it to the consultant to get included. We would encourage you, if you have Facebook or other resources for media outlets, to help promote the survey so that we can get as much input from the public. That's the whole point of the project. And then I did provide your city manager copies of the survey in English and Spanish. So if there are any residents that would prefer to do it on a hard copy, we did provide some in a envelope, and we'll work with him to get those back at the end of the time frame. And then we talked about the open house. Walk audit's coming in April, and there's the link to the project page in case anyone missed that. Okay, and then next slide. And then looking to the future. So I've been back in this position since August of 23, and we have had so much going on. It's been such an exciting time, and like I said, there's so much money out there. Looking towards next summer, we are due for an update to our regional transportation plan, which is one of the planning documents that the commission's responsible for preparing that requires input from your staff for any sort of project. So a lot of our funding requires, if you want to get funded by the state or federal government for a road project, you need to be in the RTP. And so we've talked to them about it. Start thinking about what you want to put in for your next round of projects. It's a 20-year plan. It has a 20-year outlook and a 10-year outlook. So those are kind of the two timeframes that we're looking for. Zero emissions. This is something we all know is on the horizon. Right now, the biggest concern is the transit fleet has to be completely zero emissions by 2040, and those vehicles are incredibly expensive. And so we're working with Stage to try to figure out how do we get them moved over in the midst of concerns over safety, because electric buses have not shown us that they're safe for our region because of the inclement weather and the mountains. And we've had that conversation with the bus manufacturers, and they tell us, oh, it goes great. And then we ask, what about mountains and what about snow? Well, it doesn't do so well in those. So we're hoping to hire a consultant to come in and identify what is the correct path for our region that will not put passengers or employees in harm's way when it comes to these times, the wonderful time of year we're in right now. And then lastly, the evacuation, actually go back one slide for me. The evacuation and preparedness plan. This is one of those grant opportunities I mentioned early on. We put in a grant application for about $280,000 in January to Caltrans. And so this is designed to identify evacuation routes within the communities, looking at what infrastructure would need to be maintained so that we can get our folks out when those fires come. And so if we get funded, which we will know later this summer, then we would be working with each of the local agencies on identifying what are your evacuation routes. We would have an established evacuation plan. There's a component of emergency preparedness education for our residents to making sure they're ready to go. If something happens, they have to go now. And working with the County Office of Emergency Services and the director there on really putting together a solid plan for us going forward. So the hope is that we would identify those routes, and then having identified them as evacuation routes, that would qualify them for other funding through other venues. So that's the overarching goal. So, and then I think that was, and I know that was a lot. We do have a Facebook page, so if you're not following us, we encourage you to follow us on Facebook. We post information on upcoming events. We'll be posting all of the open houses, the community events, that sort of stuff in conjunction with Sora, who's, like I said, handling the promotional stuff on that ATP project. And so then if you can go to, we're gonna do, I have a little demo for you on two different things. So on the commission's page for the RTIP, so going back to your the project that we have proposed for funding. As I said, technology is a wonderful thing until it doesn't work. There we go. Okay, so you're gonna run the computer, right? Okay. Okay, so this is the Local Transportation Commission page on the county website. Just a side note, the commission is going to hopefully adopt or approve a contract tomorrow that we are building our own website, so we will actually be outside of the county. We won't be buried in the county's website anymore. So on this page, on the left-hand banner there, you will see a whole list of projects. Everything I just talked about is kind of all there. So first off on the RTIP. So if you go to the submenu that says RTIP STIP, this actually brings up scroll back up for me. If you want to read the full document that we submitted to the state, you can view that at the very bottom. It's only 189 pages, so just some light reading. But here's the map that I was talking about, right there on that link. Oh, he's going down there. So here's the little disclaimer I was talking about there in the center. But so this is the map. And so if you click OK, it's going to show you the full county visual. And this is all through GIS. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little bookmark. There you go. And you can select Mount Shasta, and it will zoom in. And so those black and yellow lines are the boundaries of the projects that we have currently programmed and proposed for programming. So you can click on one of those links. It's going to pop up a little box, and then you scroll down, and it actually has a link to the full document of the project information. And so this is where I said, if it has a date on there, just be forewarned that it's not a guarantee. Things can change. Funding may change. So we just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. So the CTC actually requires us to make this publicly available, and so this is one step way beyond what we were ever hoping to do. Our goal with this is, as things progress, that once we get these projects constructed, I'm going to talk to the GIS guy at the county and ask him to change it to a different color or make it look, somehow where we can designate that that one's been done. So, okay, then if you can go back to that one, and then we're going to go back up and go to the Regional Active Transportation Plan. So this is the actual project page for the ATP. So it's got a little blurb about what the project's about, who's involved, how residents can get involved in the project, and there's a link there in the center for the survey in English and Spanish. And so if you click on that, it's going to bring up probably the same survey many of you have seen over the years. You click some buttons and make some selections, and if you scroll down to number 8, there is actually an interactive map here. There we go. And you'll see all those little round circles are other comments that have been submitted by other residents in various communities. If you click the open map button on the lower right-hand corner, it brings it up to a full size. And then you can drag and drop kind of, to get to your location. But if you have a specific location that you would like to put, and it actually looks like somebody has put something in there for Mount Shasta, that's excellent. So, and the subheadings right under the top there, it has a little comment box or button right there. So you click on that, it turns your cursor to black, and then you just find a spot where you want to put your concern. If it's a specific intersection, you click there, you can type in what your concern is, and then hit post. You can put your name and email address. It is optional. Just be aware that, as you can see on the side, there's lots of, you can see all the other comments. So if you don't want your information out there, make sure you leave that information out. That's all. So if anybody has a specific concern, they can go there, put it in, and then that all goes back to the consultant, and we'll be reviewing that as we move through the project. So that's all I have for you tonight. I hope it was informative. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Melissa. Do we have any questions? No comments? Okay, go ahead, Tessa.
This might be a combo question between Melissa and Todd, but just from my understanding, once with the pavement management system, once the PCI rating comes out, is that used on our end to start construction once we have the scores and see that our roads are rated, some are rated worse than others? Do we tackle those based on those ratings, on how we chip seal and get those in better condition?
That I'm going to defer to Todd, because that's really a local agency decision.
Of the PCI, and it's a combination of what kind of volume that street has. And so if we've got, say, 2 roadways that have a PCI of 31, and one is a portion of Mount Shasta Boulevard, and somewhere is a neighborhood street, we're going to hit Mount Shasta Boulevard first. But it does weigh into it, and what I'm hoping and have been talking to our Public Works Director about is a capital improvement program where we start listing out projects and figuring out a methodology of how we rank our projects, get them priced, so when a grant opportunity comes up, we can pull that project off the shelf and fund it.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Nice answer. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Very informative. All right, now this is the time for public comment. And hold on, folks. Let me just go over the rules real quick. So public comment is about you have 3 minutes to talk about items that are not contained in the agenda below. Should you have some comments on the consent agenda, you could make them here too, but generally it's subjects not contained in the agenda items we have listed. So, do we have a list with an order? All right, well, Larry seems to be anxious, and then you are? Okay, so you'll be second. And then third, can you state your name? Okay, go ahead, Larry. And just name the town that you live in, your name and town.
Click. My name is Larry Oxter. I've lived in Mount Shasta for 45 years, fixing cars for that much. My wife has worked at Lyle's Restaurant for 38 years. I've come across the council members, about my sewer line a number of times, asking you if you'll take responsibility for it. You've no reply. I understand. I wouldn't take responsibility for it because I am taking responsibility for it. The reason I'm here now is Angie and I and my neighbors, we feel that the city is overcharging us for our monthly sewer bill of $71. You are overcharging us. I've spent $1,000 on maintaining our sewer line, and I'm still paying $71 a month for me taking care of my sewer line. Everybody in town pays $71 a month for the sewer line, but they get the main line maintained by the city. So this is why I feel like we're being overcharged. You're taking care of their main lines in the city of Mount Shasta, and that money goes to the city, the $71 a month, and you are taking responsibility for the main line going to the sewage plant. Well, I'm paying $71 a month, and I'm taking care of my own sewer line, which I've done some research on this, and I can justify saying that the city of Mount Shasta is overcharging me. I'm paying more than anybody else in Mount Shasta for my sewer situation, more than anybody, along with my neighbors. I go around the neighborhood and everybody kicks in a little bit for the repair of the sewer line that we get roots and whatever, you know. So we hire a company, they take care of it, and we pay them, and I go around the neighborhood and they do that for us. So I don't blame you for not taking responsibility for the sewer line. Don't blame me at all. But I believe you are overcharging a lot of people for something that everybody else in town is getting for free. So what do? Well, you know, I've decided to let a judge decide this. Take it in front of a judge, present my case in front of a judge, and I was thinking, you know, I'm not after money from the city. I believe I'll probably sue the city for $1, you know? I just want a judgment from a judge saying, yeah, you know, Mr. Oxter, we think this is unfair, and I want a reduction in my $71 a month. And then it's only fair. I just want justice. So I'm going to leave my card here. I don't know if you want to reply to me before I go through the process. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. And my time's up.
All right, thank you, Larry.
Should I leave my card here?
You get-
So
ahead.
talk to the city attorney about this case. Sewer fees are only for access to the sewer treatment plant. It's what you're buying into is that there's capacity to treat your sewage. That's what the fee is for.
Well, the fee also takes care of the main
It does not.
lines.
It does not.
Who pays for the main lines?
It's up to grants that we get and who owns the actual trunk line. If it's a privately owned trunk line, it's up to the owner.
A private line.
Private line, yep.
Yeah. Well, I've done some research on this, and the people I've talked to says I have grounds to stand in front of the judge.
Okay.
It's a good argument. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry.
All right.
Come on up. Name and city of residence. Thank you.
My name's Heather D'Amico, and I live in Mount Shasta, in the city, downtown. Very different topic, and not on the agenda. So here's the situation. I have 5 kids, from 9 to 25, all of which have gone to school in Mount Shasta. All have gone to COS, and some are currently attending COS. So my husband and I decided to get together with some of our colleagues, and we're creating a huge event. It's a live stream event in June that...
At the college
at COS, where we're actually getting interns from the college and the high school to come and volunteer and learn with Spectrum, which is a very, very large production company. This event is already almost sold out, and we've barely even advertised it, which will seat over 500 people. We had to put it at COS because there's no other locations that can house that many people. But I want to bring support and I want to bring people to Shasta. I also own a shop in downtown Mount Shasta, and oh man, it's like, we just need a little bit more knowledge, I guess, of communities and bring some more money to Shasta. So we are going to Taiwan and Japan and Ireland and all over the world for these events that are live streamed to promote the June event in COS. And what I want from you guys, if you're open, is I want to either be sponsored, supported, or recognized, what was it?
Or somehow partner with
Somehow be able to put the city of Mount Shasta on all of our live stream advertisements.
and also in a way that could strategically benefit the city, since we're already bringing potentially 500 plus people here.
Physically, but
There-
we
there
also
may
have
be-
live stream,
Right.
which my 2 episodes were just released, which are coming out on Amazon. They're on other medias, which is season 3 of Interview with Ed on Gaia, which is now being picked up by Netflix and Hulu and so many other things. I'm doing a book signing in June, and I want to keep promoting this event, which we will no matter what, but we just thought if we could have our sponsors listed or our supporters, you know, supported by the city of Mount Shasta, as we're doing with Shasta Inn, with Todd and Tanner, I think it would be really good for us. So that's what I'm here for. That's it. It's really simple. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much. All right, number 3, come on up and name and city of residence.
I've lived in the county for about 31 years now in the county. Previously from Dunster, but I'm here. I've been here for quite a few years now. Name is Tracy Costello. Well, I've got a lot of issues with the roadways and the bike paths and the pavement in this town. We've got hundreds of potholes out there. I realize we've had a bad winter. Well, no, we haven't really had a bad winter, but all the rain and everything, the potholes have just gotten out of hand, particularly south of Berryville on the main boulevard, all the way down past the Gold Room, the whatever it is, the restaurant there, the corner of Ream Avenue, all the way from Berryville all the way down there and back. Just the potholes are a total mess. Yeah, we're spending a lot of money on studies for this idea and that idea for, I don't know, we're green lighting the creek. We got creeks everywhere. I don't see why we got a green light. Not green light, but daylight or creek coming through town. It's got a parking lot there now. It's being used. Business in town, you thrive on the sales tax here in town, but you want to take away their parking spaces. I don't get it. But like I say, we got plenty of creeks in this county, and I don't think it's such a great idea that we don't need to daylight a creek through town. There's plenty of other creeks, so we're talking about a lot of money. We're spending a lot of money on studies where the potholes aren't getting done. I've talked to Ken Kellogg. He agrees South Mount Shasta Boulevard is just terrible. And we get a lot of our money from the gas tax, the excise tax on gas, and the sales tax on gas. We get a fair amount of money from that. I don't know where that money's being diverted. It's not being put back in the roads, just like the weight fee that DMV charges every truck, regardless of size. Not going into the roads, it's going to legislature to be spent willy-nilly. Our senator says I should be going back into roads. It's the gas tax, it's the goose that laid the golden egg. These electric vehicles are not contributing a thing. They should be taxed, finally, because these electric vehicles and this whole idea about going for electric, this and that, and heat pumps are terrible. Our legislature's mandating heat pumps on all new construction, no gas stove, no gas furnaces or water heaters. This is ridiculous. Natural gas is your best buyer. We miss it here in this county. Anyway, I covered a lot of ground. I hope we can keep our gas tax to be spent on roads and potholes. Our potholes need attention. Check with Ken Kellogg. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, appreciate it. And do we have anyone else in the auditorium who would like to speak here in public comments? All right, going once, twice, three times. Who do we have in?
Line, and that will be Johanna.
All right, Johanna, you know the drill. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I just want to, I didn't catch the whole presentation that Michelle did, but that was a very nice presentation. And I just wanted to comment on buses, since that came up, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place to bring this up, but what I see every day is these large buses that are empty or maybe have one person sitting in them. And that creates a lot of, CO2 and pollution in our community, and they're very loud, and sometimes they speed a little bit. So it would be great to get like a van-sized bus that accommodates the handicapped people, kind of like those medical vans, or I can't think of the name offhand, that organization, but they have really nice modern van-sized buses that would do a better job and would be more economical. I'm sure it also costs a lot in gas money for these buses. And then one of the items on another topic, one of the items in one of the slides was an evacuation plan, and I'm not really sure how that works with the evacuation plan that the city of Mount Shasta already has, or maybe that's the part of the same plan. But there was some grant money in there, and I was wondering if I could make a request to ask for an emergency siren for our city that could be beneficial in emergencies, because not everybody has their cell phone with them in an emergency, or is glued to the texts. And a siren would give everybody notification at the same time in an emergency. This could have helped a lot of the residents in the Paradise Fire, where we know some people, and I just think, we don't have to spend a lot of money on it. We could have, maybe air horns if we had to, that's an extreme, but there are less expensive sirens that the city could invest in. And I just wanted to say that interactive map that she went through, I've been on that link, and it's a really cool little link giving you all the information. So kudos for whoever put all that together. So thank you. That was all.
Thank you, Johanna. Any more on Zoom? All right. Well, that will lead us to close public comment at this time. And we'll move on to item number 5, council and staff comments. We always start with the city manager. So Todd, you have the floor.
Okay. So we have, we've talked about 2 developers that have been looking at the landing. One is K2 Development that is currently tied up with a project in Oroville, and they are starting a large project in Shasta Lake. And they're really interested in making something pencil up here. The issue is how to make that work. We talked, well, what if we donated the property or sold it for $1? And that doesn't seem to work, because if you donate the property, you trigger prevailing wage, and with K2, at the very end, the entire cost of a project, 35% of it is in prevailing wage. And so if we were going to do something with them, we would have to, most likely to get this off the ground, do something and figure out, A, is it legal to have them pay the market rate for the site, and then seek some kind of markdown on the cost of putting in infrastructure, or seeking grants, which we're looking at. One is an EPA community enhancement grant. It's between $10 and $20 million that Siskiyou Economic Development Commission is working with me on, and the developer, K2, is going to meet with us on if there is a green component and there is an affordable housing component, then, you're in the game, you're eligible. So we're going to work on an application for them. Bob Kendrick with Kendrick Enterprises is still around, and we've touched base. He's pretty cautious about making a move. And then last week, we had a meeting with a gentleman named Frank Bustamante and Joe Pincino, who this party says they've been looking at the landing since the 1990s, have walked the site, and they brought, they claimed to council a proposal for a hotel and for, luxury RV parking long-term and some affordable housing twice. And their claim is that what held them up in both cases is not having an agreed-upon value for the property. And they're back, and they're really interested in tying this up. My concern, which we'll find out in more conversations, is does that mean they want to buy the property and sit on it, or as part of an LOI, are they planning to move forward with due expediency? So we need to figure that out, and I think part of the process, in talking to them more, and I think for anybody coming and looking at the landing, one of the things that would be prudent to pick up is a current commercial valuation of that property, so we have, something, in reach that we can point to that's current. So that's where the development stands at the landing. We've got some, some really solid leads. Again, nothing's real until we've got something signed. Next, we've been talking to PACE, and Muriel's been in these discussions about applying for community development block grant funds to potentially fund unpaved areas of Mount Shasta Boulevard. We also are, separate. We applied for a RAISE grant last year to pave unpaved portions of Mount Shasta Boulevard with active transportation, ped, bike, walk additions to it. And we weren't successful the first time around. We learned a lot from the webinars post award this time around. We are looking to submit by the end of February based on the comments that we received for additional money to pave and add those active transportation components. And it's kind of backwards, but we're bringing the proposal for the grant back to the next council meeting. The first time around, it was, I believe, just over $13,000 to write that grant. It's a federal grant. It's pretty complicated. This time around, since we're repeating a lot of the same stuff, we're looking at a little over $6,000. So that's that. So we have been talking to the LTAC and the Library Expansion Committee, the Friends of the Library, and members of council that are part of some of these groups. And to walk through it, essentially we've been looking at picking up the expansion of the library again, picking it up fresh, get a new look at it. And so we put out an RFP. We had 5 respondents. There were 2 parties that were picked. One is Hummer Engineering with Chris Schneider, a local architectural designer. And the other party is a design and build firm called Nolan Tam. They specialize in public spaces, especially libraries, expansions, complete renovations, new libraries built. They were picked for the first phase of this, which is to refresh the project, come out on March 14th to talk to the Library Expansion Committee and where everybody is now, and then go out for public comment the day after, Friday the 15th, to get comments on what people would like to see in the library. and compile that information. Their plan is then to come back with conceptual plans, first a scope of work, conceptual plans, bring that back, refine it, then come up with floor plans and, planned programming of the library as well as a budget to complete the project, and then we figure out who finishes this work up. And, this information about actually awarding that contract is part of the agenda tonight, which we'll hit. So the well negotiations, which have been held up with One Shasta, they'd like to hold on to the well rights while allowing the city all the water they need, have granted us property to, to rebuild or to build the tank and the easement. And the issue was, well, how do we view this? What does state water law say? So we hired a firm called Somac, Simmons and Dunn out of Sacramento, with their expertise being solely water and well rights. And we had a meeting with one of their folks. They were extremely prepared, extremely knowledgeable, and we think we have a way forward. They have written language that we can then plug into the agreement for the well. We need to make sure both parties are good with it. It just came back today. But I do think we've got that way forward, and we're pretty close to getting something wrapped up there. And then, of course, coordinating with the county on the countywide active transportation plan. Of course, the same firm, Alta, did our active transportation plan. I've met with them and, went over what was in ours and, I think we can coordinate, had a great meeting. We'll continue to follow up. And I guess there is another issue that we should touch on. It's a little uncomfortable, is the old hospital property, 201 Eugene. The original information that I got from the Bay Area Receivership Group is that when the property burned, that it was in the receiver's hands. It's not in the city's hands, but in the receiver's hands. And while that's true, what has turned out is that it's still the owner's until it actually lands in a bidder's hands. So we had a hearing up in Wairika County on in that court in Wairika on Friday, and the owner has insurance on the property. The owner was arguing that if there is any insurance on this, that it should come to him. Our argument was, no, you didn't contain the site, and then this fire happened, and now we have, we have hazardous materials that we need to have cleaned up. And the judge ruled with us, and if there is money dispersed, that it will come to the Bay Area Receivership Group with a big chunk of it for cleanup. Now, one of the issues that we're facing is that we've had a contractor that deals with these issues come up and look at the site, and given the amount of water that we needed to douse that fire, instead of being contained and kept dry in one spot, the entire site is a hot spot. So we're looking at a cleanup cost of between $500,000 and $600,000. So it's big. So in the meantime, we're looking at what it costs to tarp the entire area. We put a new hydrant in up there until we can get this tarp so we can make sure the site stays wet, so there's no aerosolization of any of the hazardous materials up there. But we're working on it, trying to get it capped for now until we figure out this whole mess with the insurance about getting it cleaned up fully. And that puts us on hold to get this property out for bid and built. So that's not the best news, but it's moving in the right direction. So that's what I've got.
All right, thank you, Todd. You have some questions?
Todd, on Friday last week, at the hearing? Who was the presiding, or who was the judge who presided over the hearing? Judge Pacheco, or?
Yes, and it was, Dixon was going to stay on for the entire, even though she's retired, but she, you know, given how long this has dragged on, she's walked away and, yep. And she was extremely sympathetic and completely brought up to speed on the entire project.
Judge Pacheco?
Yeah.
Good.
All right, Chief, you have any comments? Okay, Muriel's left. She's going to have plenty to talk about later. Any council comments at this point? No? All right, I'm just going to bring up one issue right now. It has to do with the stormwater 218 process we're going through. I wanted to confirm that we have a stormwater master plan, and we do. It dates back to September of 2020. And there are 8 projects mentioned in that master plan. I'll just go through it really quickly. And I think this is in order of importance, but when I get to it, I'll say that that should change given what's going on in Everett Memorial. Coal Creek realignment and restoration, Mill Creek realignment and restoration, that's down by the old mill site. Castle Creek improvements here, I think probably realignment and restoration would be more appropriate at this point. Restoration being part of that daylighting. Washington Drive to South Mount Shasta Boulevard improvements, that's going to be mostly pipes. McLeod Avenue installation, I guess there's no drainage on McLeod Avenue at all at this point, so that would be lots of pipes. Everett Memorial Highway retrofits, so this to me would be number 1 right now. If you drive up Everett Memorial by the high school, you'll see the little canyon that's forming from the problem having to do with Upton Highlands. So that is a serious, if you don't think drainage is a serious issue, currently we have serious drainage issues, stormwater drainage issues, and the situation on Everett Memorial is such a case. There's also having to do with Coal Creek. If you go down to Commercial Way, the sidewalk on the west side of that apparently is collapsing. Is that what's going on there? The tricky thing there, although Coal Creek would be part of this, one of the major projects that the stormwater master plan would call into improvement, that's actually owned by the shopping center, and so it's how to fix that is going to be a little bit more delicate. But anyhow, 2 obvious drainage situations that are somewhat critical right now. Stormwater drainage situations. Anyhow, moving on, Ski Bowl Drive retrofits, and then Forest Street improvements. Some of these are relatively minor, and I think they won't cost too much in the current construction, underground construction world, such as maybe only $1 million for, say, Forest Street. But as Raftaley's already pointed out, the Coal Creek project is going to be over $6 million. So the fund that would be raised by the rate change on the stormwater utility or enterprise zone will actually allow us to either do these projects piecemeal in $1 million chunks, or just go out to the bond market and actually raise the funds all at once to do the projects. But that's my input in case anyone thinks that we don't have a plan. We actually have these 8 projects mentioned in a prior study and the stormwater master plan, and we have drainage issues that need to be attended to right away. And so we'll move on to item number 6. Todd, do you have any updates on committees?
No DEAC meeting? On Wednesday was the next DEAC.
Beautification's not an issue. LTAC, well, we're going to be dealing with that coming up here anyhow, so I think it's time to move on to the consent agenda. So we're going to be technically correct about this consent agenda item number A. And it has to do with people not attending, both. So I'm going to lead the way on A and actually make motions, okay? And then tell the council members who's eligible to vote and participate, all right? And then after A, we'll get back to normal on the consent agenda. Reading. Consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinance on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, January 22nd, 2024, regular and special meetings. I will move to approve those minutes. Those eligible to second and vote on this are myself,
Me and Jeffrey.
Councilman Collins, and Redmond.
So second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Clerk got the information there? Okay, great. And then we move on to February 12th, 2024, regular meeting. I will move to approve those minutes, and the absent person was John Redmond. So we have a motion by myself and a second by Stearns. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, back to normal. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable February 8th, 2024, total gross payroll and taxes for period ending February 4th, 2024. C, Mountain Runners 4th of July letter of support. And D, monthly investment and revenue report. Can I get a motion for B through D?
I'll make a motion for items 7B through D on the consent agenda by title only.
Second.
Stearns beat
Okay.
John on the second.
Gotcha.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. All right, so after that somewhat lengthy consent agenda item, we move on to the meat of the agenda items. Agenda item number 8, agreement between the city and the Friends of the Library for library operations, and Todd will go through the background story on this.
Yes, so the Friends of the Library have graciously stepped up since the departure of the executive director of the library, our independent contractor, and because they're doing all this work out of the goodness of their heart right now, they wanted to codify the relationship in a formal agreement with the city that laid out roles and responsibilities, indemnification, that kind of stuff. You know, with the idea being that they continue to run the library until a suitable library manager / business manager is hired. And so, you know, there's been a lot of back and forth in terms of what sort of form this agreement should take. And this is what our city attorney settled on, and we've had some back and forth to make sure that we get this right, and we're not placing an undue burden on some folks that are, you know, volunteering for the city, and not forcing them to do stuff beyond the fact that they're volunteering. So we have this agreement on the agenda tonight that we have an agreement on, and you know, and just I want to really thank the Friends for all the work that they do.
Thank you, Todd. Questions regarding clarification? Start to my left. All right. No, everyone's clear. Oh, great. All right, we'll move on to public comment, correct? Yeah. Those in the audience who would like to comment on this item, please come forward. Well, everyone's really clear. All right. Anybody on the Zoom land there? No? All right, bring this back to City Council to discuss. Does anyone have any comments about this?
First of all, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Library who have just done incredible work for the library and the community for decades now. And for some reason, and somehow, are willing to continue. Unless there's discussion, I would like to move approval of the contract.
Everybody good?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. That was simple enough. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? There you go. Kathy, we'll move on to item number 9. Approval of scope of work from Knoll and Tam Architects for the Mount Shasta Library renovation project. Todd will again have the narrative on this item.
So it's written in the agenda, the LTAC. It actually should read, the Library Expansion Committee with some members of LTAC is also serving on the Expansion Committee. Essentially, the big push, obviously, is to pick up the library expansion, renovation again. We have a set of plans that I don't know all the details on, but we decided, or those that were part of this before decided not to move on. So we decided, let's go with a fresh start, and we put out requests for qualifications, and we had 5 firms respond, and we chose 2 to be interviewed. The first was a team consisting of Hummer Engineering and Chris Schneider as the architectural designer, and we also spoke with a firm with the name Knoll and Tam, who specializes in public spaces, especially library renovations, expansions, and new development. And what we decided is to refresh the process, and we hired Knoll and Tam, or we're about to hire Knoll and Tam to do the following: to come out, talk to the Library Expansion Committee and those involved in the library, and get a fresh perspective of what they see as our needs, and what they would like to, how they would like the library to be programmed. In addition, that would happen on March 14th. On March 15th, Knoll and Tam will be here, and they will be holding a public session where we're looking for patrons of the library and other members of the public to comment on what's working, what's not, what they'd like to see, and based on that information, compile that and come up with a scope of work and a set of a set of preliminary plans, a site plan, and for them to develop a budget for the process. Before they do that, they would come back to make sure that what they've drawn up, doesn't need some tweaks. They want to make sure they get that right, and the end product is that new perspective on what folks want now. The preliminary plans, the site plan, and a budget, and then we decide going forward who it is that we want to see carry these plans out, whether that's Hummer Engineering and Chris Schneider, whether that's Knoll and Tam, or whether we decide to go with another firm. And so what this letter of intent that Knoll and Tam has produced will get them on board and get them ready to come up in March.
All right, so,
Clarification.
yes.
What is before us tonight is the question whether the city council simply approves this preliminary step.
It does, and it is, it's a retention letter with, well, they're working on the actual contract. I'll come back with the actual contract, but this is to ensure that they get paid when they come up in March.
Okay, so to make this clear, this is a preliminary step to say that we have every intent of signing, agreeing to a contract with them for $55,000.
Exactly.
Okay, so there'll be one more vote to solidify this agreement. We'll do that as a council, as an agenda item.
Yes, with the full contract in front of us.
Okay, and that'll be the
It's
first-
really going to say the
fir-
same thing, but all the usual codicils and.
Right, so that'll be the first meeting in March,
Yeah.
before the meetings. Okay. Are we clear on that? Okay, it's an important distinction there. All right. Time for public comment. Library people? No? No? Oh, this is just too easy. All right. We'll bring this back for one more time? No? All right. For council discussion, anybody like to comment on this? Maybe one of the ad hoc committee members?
Who could you be referring to? Mayor Stackfleth and I are on this subcommittee that meets with LTAC and has gone through the interview process. And they have my support. They were very thorough, and the fact that they specialize in libraries is a big plus. So I'm excited to see what this next phase will bring with the public outreach, et cetera.
Is that a motion to approve?
It sure is.
I'll second that.
Great. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? I have a 5-0 vote on that item. Moving right along. All right, so we're up to number 10. Yes. Engagement letters for the commercial appraisal of 3 APNs that comprise the Brunel parcels. So again, the city manager has the floor to describe what is going on here.
Yeah, so the last few meetings, for those that have kept track, we have a project that the city has an ad hoc committee going to look at the potential for one-way streets on Mount Shasta and Chestnut, otherwise referred to as a couplet, as well as daylighting Castle Creek. There is a parcel on Chestnut Street that there is an improved parcel with a structure on it and a paved parking area, as well as 2 assessor's parcel numbers that are unpaved lots. And we've got 2 different lease agreements out for both the unpaved lots and the developed parcels. And the owner is still chewing over, which one of these, if not both, that he wants to sign. And as a preemptory move, Chuck Ryan of Ryan Valuation Services has recently retired. What I've found in reaching out for commercial appraisers is that from Chico to Medford, it's at least a year out before we can get somebody to look at this. In this case, Chuck Ryan has an interest in seeing Castle Creek done, so he's willing to pick this up. And he has produced a proposed cost for both commercial appraisals that he can start within a month. The total for the appraisal for all 3 APNs is $10,000.
All right, questions, clarifications? Go ahead, Tim first.
So I anticipate that what we would do tonight, or my understanding is what we would do tonight, is approve funding for up to $10,000, depending on how the owner of the property, which of the leases the owner of the property signs. Is that correct?
Yes, and the way it's looking as of today, which there seems to be a moving target, is that he wants to move forward with the developed parcel as well as the 2 undeveloped parcels.
Okay.
Interesting. That means he's not getting any bites on that building. Well, he thought he had several interested parties and they're all falling through. And I will not go any further than that. Jeffrey, yes.
City Manager, could you just explain why we're getting an appraisal, not just of the 2 vacant lots, but also the developed lot?
So this is kind of a multi-part question. The developed parcel is widely suspected to be contaminated based on the previous use of this property. And so what we're doing is coming up with an appraisal for the developed parcels as well as the 2 undeveloped parcels, with the idea that we want to make sure that, there's less of a worry about the undeveloped parcels, that there is any kind of leakage. There'll be transmission fluid, there'll be oil, that it's not leaking from that site. That would, if we purchase these properties, we'd end up in liability. With the developed parcel, what we're looking at is what the value is, and then we're going to be bringing back to council a proposal for doing an environmental assessment of both properties with, we can then, with the appraisal and when we find out the extent of any environmental issues there, if the environmental issues exceed the appraised value, that's something that we may want to walk away from. If it's not, we would need to negotiate the value of that property for sale at the appraised value minus the cost of that cleanup. And so what we're doing is hedging our bets to make sure we're not getting into a liability situation, and ultimately that we're not overpaying for 3 parcels, 2 parcels, depending on what we come up with, through grant money or whatever source we can.
More clarifications? Nope. All right, let's move into public comment. We still have about 4 people in the audience. Does anyone want to come up and talk about this item? All right, let's move to Zoom. No hands. Back to council to discuss the item. Any thoughts?
My thoughts are that the city staff is proceeding prudently on this, and we ought to approve funding for the appraisals up to $10,000, depending upon the circumstances that the city manager referred to.
Sounds like a motion to me.
Yes.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And aye. Any opposed? 5-0. This is going easier than I forecast. Great. All right. This might take some time. All right. Budget adjustments. We're going to move over to Muriel Terrell, the Finance Director, to present this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you, you have a request to review and discuss some proposed budget adjustments for fiscal year 2023 through 2024 after our mid-year reporting was done some time ago. Some of these things you've already discussed, which is going to be the first item. You've already discussed professional services for Plan West to extend their work, including potential annexations that will affect both the general and water funds. The cost expected to occur before the end of the year is about $15,000 to be split between the general and water fund. The parking fund, which we've just discussed, which is going to include some rent for those lots, as well as some potential environmental work, which will probably get started before the end of the fiscal year, as well as, which is not in this report, as well as the $10,000 that you just approved for the appraisals, which would be paid for through the parking fund or the, actually the DEAC fund, right? Then in the library fund, you've also just done the contracting to do scoping and public outreach, conceptual plans. The cost that we anticipate to be done before the end of the fiscal year is about $19,000. I know that they're planning on being here in March. I'm not sure if they'll actually be done with the project by the end of June. So I just kind of hedged our bet for the library fund to come up with the $19,000 for that. The bigger thing coming up, the next 2 budget adjustment requests are for new software. The city has not had an updated software for more than 25 years. In our assessment of the selected cloud-based software, we took more than a year to research and review many of the different applications. We strive to bring areas that are currently done by hand and integrate that with, to achieve effectiveness and efficiencies throughout the city. Each module interacts with each other, reducing duplication of effort. The system will integrate planning, public works, building, administration, and finance processes. There will be an employee portal for their earnings information. They'll be able to go on and sign in and find their W-2, change their withholding requirements, any of those sorts of things they'll be able to do through a portal. Utility customers will have access to online account for history usage and the ability to make payments. Forms will be developed for online submission and payment in a variety of areas, for instance, planning as well as building. Forms, all modules are connected to the same database, thus allowing easy access for customers and their city activity in every area, whether it be utility, building, licensing, and planning. This holistic approach serves the city, customers, staff efficiencies, and brings us into the current century. The Finance Committee met and discussed each of these modules with a representative from Springbrook. The representative answered questions posed by the committee. We intend to expand services to include the following modules as are outlined in your report. Yearly subscription. I'm just going to actually tell you the particular modules. We have utility billing, building permits, license and permits, the finance suite, payroll, project management, employee self-service, and fixed assets. Those modules, the yearly subscription is just over $38,000. The installation for all of those is just over $90,000. We also are trying to do the express bill pay portion of this, which is the portal that customers will be able to go in and use and pay their bills. It comes with a forms builder, which we're going to design all these new forms for people to actually fill out online and submit automatically and make their payments from that. And some support hosting, which has a yearly fee. And the form builder has an installation setup of a little over $2,000. The grand total for all of this is a little over for $41,000 per year. That would be an annual subscription that has to be recognized as an expense. The installation and setup piece of this is just over $92,000. That would be recognized as capital outlay as is required through accounting rules. Anyway, that's my report. The Finance Committee, if you'd like to jump in and talk about these products.
We will, and I'm
that
going to.
That would be great. Another thing that happened in this is that because there are so many different modules that take into consideration lots of different things like utilities, for instance, the utility module, I spread the cost based on where these things were going to be used. So the general fund is not taking the hit for all of this. Whereas in years past, it has. In this case, it's been spread through all the different funds to recognize their use for those particular types of products.
All right, so before we get to clarifying questions, I'm going to have my colleague Tessa Clore talk about this item in detail, and then I will add more comments after public comment. Okay? Go ahead, Tessa.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and I met with Muriel and Jody from the city last week, I believe, along with the Springbrook representative, Gary, who was kind enough to get us up to speed for what has been a long process of vetting for Muriel and Jody. And I have had experience with clients from my real job where they have had an opportunity to transition from a current accounting software to an upgraded accounting software. And I've seen it go really well, and I've seen it go completely horrifically. So it prepared me to ask some really hard questions to Gary, and I was really not surprised, but pleased with his answers. And I think the biggest takeaway that I had was where I've seen it go sideways is where the consultant, which is a third party, comes in to handle the transition and the installation of the software. Those costs can get incurred pretty quickly, and the timeline keeps going out. But what Gary was confident with was they do all of their integration and consulting in-house. So that means that they are very well vetted with the product. They know what they're doing, and they own the installation part of that. So I was pleased with that response, and I didn't have any unease after we spoke. So that aside, I think that the public interface is going to be phenomenal and moves us into the 21st century with the public and how they can do utility billing and pay online, that sort of thing. And another thing to consider is just with fixed assets, and I've been on the auditing side of the city and seen how detailed these things have to be and how much work goes into this. Just having an interface that handles that is going to reduce staff time substantially, and that's just one little piece. So I think the other side to look at it is how much staff time will be released with the upgrade to the software.
Thank you, Tessa. All right, so clarifying questions, you must have some. No? Oh.
Did you?
Yeah, go.
When you two were getting the presentations on the software, the equation of cost, software offset by cost reductions, benefits, reduction in staff times, shortening of building cycle permits, et cetera, did you get any estimates of how much money they put as a cost savings to implement this $130,000?
I didn't ask for a specific, that was my takeaway based on how sophisticated the software is. And I think it will be a learn as we go type of thing to see how sophisticated it is and how much, but I think Muriel could probably answer that better than me.
Well, the cost savings is in time for staff, I would say. Also, the interaction between department heads, as a for instance, between public works, planning, finance, admin, all of that will be integrated to where you'll get a message, say it's a particular building permit or something like that, you're going to get a message that this has come up and we need to discuss it, or whatever the case may be. So it's really taking us out of doing things by hand. As a for instance, business licenses are complete separate modules right now, to where when somebody pays their business license or the business licenses go out, people come in and they pay it. So we've already done the input for the business licenses. So that's one person going in and doing that. Now the payment comes in, and that has to be entered into a whole nother section of our software. So now somebody's handled it again. In this case, the business license would go out, the person would see it, they would pay online. No other person would have had to have touched it until we go in to do the reconciliations and those sorts of things that we would do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
To mention that Springbrook only deals with government entities, largely with cities, and our neighbor to our north, City of Wairika, uses them. Mm-hmm. So Muriel has a resource as we get going also.
All right, so my impression regarding the labor saving aspect of this was that at the very least, there will be no need to go to 6 people in the finance department. There's 5 now. Whether we'll be able to reduce to 4 at some time is to be determined based on how efficient this system really is. There's going to be a one-year phase-in, and who knows, maybe Muriel and her team will find out that it's super efficient and really helps them out a lot. And that's the hope, but I don't think it's appropriate to talk about whether we're going to reduce staff at this point. So anyhow, Muriel, if you want to.
Well, I think that it may not be a reduction of staff per se. It may be a reworking of what staff do. For instance, it'd be lovely to have somebody who administers grants and actually does some grant writing and does some follow-up and monitoring of each grant that comes through. That would be very useful instead of somebody who's doing data input for business licenses, who's actually doing some grant research and those sorts of things. Just as a for instance, that's my dream, let's say.
So sort of, it'll free up time of current staff to do more important things, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we are on the. Yeah, that's next, unless we have more questions. So that's where we are in the labor-saving aspects of this. And Tessa has one more comment.
I have a question. What is the current subscription fee for what you use now annually?
It's about $15,000, but I'll preface that to say that to update to the software that for cloud-based software and actually update the programs that we do have was more expensive than Springbrook's proposal.
Good to know.
By quite really.
Okay, so we'll go to public comment. And we have one person hand up here. Great.
Heather D'Amico again. First of all, yay! Because it's crazy having to pay my license through my utility bill system for my store versus it's like I'm paying my utilities for my house and my other properties in my shop, and then when I have to pay my city license, I'm going into the same website and having to put a code in and a note that says I'm paying my license. So I think this is huge and amazing, but one of my questions was, is it the same system that Wairika is using for their courthouse?
It's the city of Wairika, not the county.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did I say county?
No, you said courthouse. The courthouse is run by
Is
the.
the county? Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm like, okay. So is it a different company that's doing it? It's the city, all the websites for the city that's being used? Is that where the correlation is or the comparison?
They're using it for their accounting software. I'm not sure what the court uses, but it's for their accounting software.
So, and if I go in to pay something at like a Wairika location, that's the website I would see and be able to access to bill pay in there?
I would assume.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little research. I'm super excited, yay, for upgrading our system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Anyone else in the auditorium? No. Anyone online?
We do have one hand raised, and it will be Johanna.
Okay, Johanna, go ahead.
Hi there. So yeah, I think this is awesome that we're upgrading our system after 25 years. That sounds like it was much needed. Just a couple questions. Are they going to run both systems parallel for a specific number of months to ensure that, you run the old system for a little bit and then you run the new system for that same little bit of number of months? Sometimes they'll do it for a quarter, at least a quarter, so you can see your quarterly numbers come out correctly, and sometimes they do it longer than that, including yearly. And then what kind of training is going to be needed for staff to learn the new system, as well as for the public with like online tutorials, mailers, and new instructions on the city's website, perhaps? And is there going to be a public chat feature for simple questions? Understanding that, more complicated things for like building permits will require, probably a phone call to someone. But Perhaps simple questions might be able to be answered via chat feature. Anyway, just some thoughts hearing some of this dialogue tonight. Anyway, thank you for considering those.
All right, Johanna, thank you very much. Mary, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, I think the answer to most of her questions was yes. In running both systems, I believe it's called mirroring, something like that, and that's something that is typically done in all systems and will be done in this case. When you're talking about tutorials and those sorts of things, we'll be working on updating our website and all of that, and give directions for the portal and all of those sorts of things. That's all in the mix. And as far as training, we're going to be receiving hundreds of hours of training as each module is developed, where we would be testing each module and questioning the developer, as well as making sure it meets our needs, and asking them to make changes when necessary for us to get through updating the system.
Any other people online? No? All right, so we'll close public comment on this agenda item and bring it back to City Council for further discussion. And I'll lead the way here regarding that. So I went to the meeting last week with concerns about more than just the software. The auditor, Charles, what's his last name? I'm not sure, but Pellew is working on the 2022-23 numbers, and Muriel and Jody were kind enough to ease my mind with not necessarily the final audited number on our reserve ending last year, but what they believe will be the number. So it's $2.3 million, of which $159,000 is the equipment fund. Okay, take that out, and it's 2.15 million is the reserve, which was predicted, and so that's where we started this current year, which is good. I was relieved. I hope you're all relieved, especially you, Jeff. So, will we have a deficit this year? Yes. Revenue was very strong in the first quarter, tailing off a little bit in the second quarter, and I felt that just from my regular job. I was worried that it would be worse than it turns out to be. So, Muriel's prediction is that maybe the revenue will be somewhat soft, but not problematic. And so, yeah, we're going to probably end up somewhere between 1.5 million and 1.7 million as our reserve balance at the end of the current year that we're in. Again, that was a forecast. Things influencing that are what we're talking about now. Application of grant funds regarding this is to the positive side of a COPS grant. Will that be a positive thing this year, Muriel? Yeah. So it's a wait and see type of game, so to speak. I came away relieved, and this is before we started the discussion on Springbrook. Regarding Springbrook, I had a few concerns. One of them was how modern and thorough is this? And I walked away from the meeting, just like Tessa, thinking that this is going to help us run a much better finance department regarding customer relations, regarding internal relations of employees and their different tasks, and so forth. So I was really impressed by the presentation by Gary. And that was one main concern. The other main concern was updating. I walked away being told that yearly, this system will update to be current with respect to generally accepted accounting principles and generally accepted standards and procedures. Very important, so our staff doesn't have to stress about whether they're up to date on those two main regulatory concerns. And then lastly, while the price does seem high, it seemed to me that at the very least, the finance department would be much more efficient, and there would be no future need to go beyond 5 people. So I walked away thinking that as far as long-term, what the staffing requirements will be, that'll be determined by the growth of the city, how how busy we are administering to this municipality, financially speaking, and regulatory procedures too. But I walked away confident that we'll be able to hold at 5. I think that's the savings right there. And those 5 will be able to do more and better work, as Muriel pointed out. So very much in favor of doing this and making the investment required. So, more comments?
Before we get to moving for adoption of resolution having to do with the one you just discussed, we've got 2 resolutions.
We do.
And what's the resolution number? CCR 24-04 for the budget adjustment for professional services.
Regarding?
Through fiscal year 23-24, in the general fund for $7,500, water fund for $7,500, parking fund for $8,600, and library fund for $19,000 for a total of $42,600.
Motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 5-0 vote. Well done. And Tim?
I move adoption of resolution CCR-24-05, resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta approving budget adjustment for software yearly subscription as an expense and software installation as capital outlay in fiscal year 2023-2024, and authorize the city manager to enter into agreements with Springbrook and Express Bill Pay totaling $133,772.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we have a comment. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay.
Well, all of us use software. We've all used old software and had it updated. And when we went to write that check, the first thing we had to do was go look and make sure we had enough money in our checking account. When we started this year, we planned to lose $475,000 on a $6 million general fund budget. Last month, that went up to $520,000. And with this proposal, it goes over $600,000 in 1 year. I have a problem with that. I do not think this is heading in the correct direction. Of course, all the wonderful things that this software will do, I'm sure they're accurate, and I thank the committee for exploring the aspects of outsourcing, installation aspects, and things that will make this work. I'm sure as given it as good a chance as it can. I noted that there were a number of modules in this piece of software that could be tiered, some in this year, some in next year, or that were 4.5 months away from the end of this year, 4 months from the end of this year, fiscal year. I'm just asking people my fellow council members to go, are we really going to take our budget to where I don't have this figure on the top of my head, but I'm going to imagine it is the single largest, not just by absolute, but by also percentage-wise budget deficit we've ever had in this town, ever. I'm just a little uneasy about that, no matter how good this stuff is. And I suspect there's a great need, and while I would have some questions, I trust my fellow council members, both of who are on the committee to evaluate this, who are well qualified to evaluate it. I don't know how I can support all of this. I'm not sure that we should. I'm not sure that we shouldn't delay parts of it or all of it until next year and figure out how to come back to a balanced budget, because we cannot keep going down $425,000 last year, $600,000+ this year, and we don't know how much money we're going to lose next year, and revenue for the first half of the year was flat. And that's flat given price increases or inflation, which is a net loss in transactions. I'm not comfortable that we will get to a no balanced, no more huge losses next year. I'm sorry to be the voice of some discontent with this. I realize there's a lot of support of this. I just have to bring this up. I'm just concerned. That's all, folks. I'm just concerned, and I would like, before we head down a motion and a second, that we have some more discussion about, is there any opportunity to taper some of this into next year, which is only 4 months away, such that we hit another budget cycle and can figure out how to get to more lower budget deficits to zero budget deficit with regards to looking at this software in the context of our entire budget. And that's all I would request some conversation on, but if that's not desired, then okay.
Through the chair. I think that we all appreciate the concerns about the budget deficit, budget revenue. I don't think Councilmember Collings is the only budget hawk on this council. We have some very good minds who sit on this council, business minds, and we have a very good finance director with also a CPA and long history of dealing with budgets and finances. We have software that's 25 years old that was purchased in the 20th century and was hopefully providing everything that could be provided 25 years ago. We now have a need to either update that software, which would cost more than this software, or to approve this resolution, which brings us into the 21st century with all of its, I think, cost savings, labor savings, and greater public service than we could otherwise provide. I don't know that the subscription prices or installation prices would be less expensive 4 months from now. I would anticipate the opposite. So I, for one, would like to pass this now.
So would I, and I don't find the actual price all that daunting, knowing a lot about software development, custom software development, or quasi-custom, such as this, and I think it's a reasonable price. should we have a downturn in revenue that's substantial where we have to make cuts, I think having this type of software in the finance department will help us run the finance department with less labor, if I could put that discreetly. And therefore, I think it's a worthy investment to do right now and implement right now, just in case.
If there's no more discussion, I'll call the matter.
Yeah, you want to do, could the clerk do a roll call vote on this, please?
Councilmember Kluwer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Redmond,
Aye.
Councilmember Collins,
No.
Councilmember Stearns,
Aye.
Mayor Stacklet.
Aye. All right, so the main items are concluded. We are moving on to item number 12, reports on outside meetings. So the main meeting was what we've been talking about here with item number 11. So Tessa, I don't think there's any need to rehash our meeting with Gary. Outside of that, we didn't have any other ad hoc, we didn't get around to it. The library stuff has been postponed to March. I have a meeting with the Center for this Collier Interpretive and Information Center tomorrow, so I'll talk about that a little bit next city council meeting. Nobody else has any outside meetings? We already talked about Lola, right? Yeah, I did, okay. So we'll move on to number 13. I'm not going to bother running through them all. They pretty much are the same ones that have been there for a while, but the list is getting smaller. I have some ideas about a couple other future agenda items, but I'm not 100% sure I want to make them future agenda items. I have to do some more research and have some discussions with Todd, so I have nothing to add. Do you folks on my right have anything to add? Go ahead, Tim.
I would entertain the possibility of adding discussion and possible action of the item that Heather Del Mico brought before us in public comment. I'd like to have more information about that, though. And maybe that can...
Yeah, I was wondering about that, too. I was going to suggest that she just go and talk with Todd directly first and clarify what exactly it is that you want to do. Is that okay?
Oh, that really was the perfect thing.
Okay.
To whoever you felt was best. I just thought if I brought it to the council first, you guys could...
Yeah, we just a marketing opportunity, right? Is that what you're...
Yeah.
And you want our support, too?
I want to advertise Mount Shasta.
Okay.
And bring more financial support and assist with the exact
Okay.
thing that you were talking about.
Okay, so it's a marketing opportunity, and we certainly have done those type of things. So if you could visit either on the phone or in person with the city manager, that would be great. All right, that said, we'll just see what Todd has to say about it next meeting. All right. Without objection, we're going to conclude this meeting at approximately 7:27. Have a good night, folks.